Audrey Brigitta. You can call me Audrey or Brigitta, and today I'll be walking through the portfolio that I made for my thematic analysis of contemporary English literature class. I decided to focus on teenagers, specifically how these youths react to growing up, as in the hardships, responsibilities, disillusionment. That's how I would define growing up. And I chose this theme because it came from a very personal place for me. I've realized these past few years that I've been going through some sort of roller coaster. I've experienced very many ups and downs, something that I have never experienced before as a child, where I remained very static in opinions, views, and behaviors and such. And I naturally turned to my friends to see how they were doing, and turns out they were going through the exact same thing as me. They were breaking down growing up constantly for at least around 4 years now. So I realized that this was an actual phenomenon going on amongst teenagers of this generation, and I decided to explore it. So for the works that I've chosen for this portfolio, I actually sorted them out in a specific order to reflect the stages of growing up, but not specific stages, just I wanted them to grow as we read through the analyses and the stories and poems and such. There are 2 parts to this portfolio. It's not an official separation, but if I would divide my works into categories, it would be the first half and the second half. The first half has The Scholarship Jacket, Blackberry Picking, The Flowers, Circe, Meet Me at Her Spot, and Dead End. So the first one is a short story by Martha Salinas called The Scholarship Jacket. It tells the story of a 14-year-old girl named Martha who is top of her grade and is valedictorian. Now, school tradition is that every valedictorian gets their own free scholarship jacket. And Martha's sister just so happens to have had that jacket back when she was still her age. And so Martha really wants it for herself. Problem is that the principal is planning on giving this jacket to another girl who has a more influential father. So I chose this to be the very first story in my portfolio because it shows a young teenager before anything else. Like, she has something done against her, the scheme that's done against her of them wanting to snub her of the victory jacket. However, she's not aware of what's actually going on. All she knows is that there's suddenly a weird new rule that's coincidentally happening the time when she's supposed to be getting her jacket. But she doesn't know that there's a more sinister and more unfairly motivated scheme behind that new rule. The next 2 works that I have are similar, as in I chose them for similar reasons. These works are Blackberry Picking by Seamus Heaney and The Flowers by Alice Walker. Both of these works show the beginnings of disillusionment and loss of innocence, akin to that of a crack in the walls that are put up around them, and they're finally seeing the truth. Now, first, we have Blackberry Picking by Seamus Heaney. It is much more tame and metaphorical compared to The Flowers by Alice Walker. It's about a narrator who picks blackberry fruits and discovers that some of them had gone rotten. And they're, of course, upset by this, but nonetheless hopes that next time he picks these berries, they're not gonna go rotten. But of course that doesn't happen, and the poem implies that he knows that it will never happen. From the very beginning, he knows that it will never not rot. Meanwhile, The Flowers by Alice Walker presents a more straightforward telling of the loss of innocence by making the main character, Little Mayap, literally encounter a lynched man. Compared to Blackberry Picking, The Flowers offer a much faster terror. For Mayap, she immediately sees this dead black man, because he was lynched, and we are told that she immediately she'll never be able to live the same ever again after seeing this lynched man. Meanwhile, in Blackberry Picking, We are told that the narrator loses hope slowly because he still has hope. It's just that he's let down every single time he has hope. Next, we have Cersei, Meet Me at Her Spot, Dead End, and We Are Okay. We Are Okay is actually not a part of the first half of the portfolio, but I still decided to put it in here in this video just because I think it fits into what I'm discussing a little bit. These works, it's where I explore reactions from a teenager towards the hardships that approach them as a part of oncoming adulthood. First, we have Cersei. Cersei is a Greek retelling by Madeline Miller about the enchantress Cersei from Odysseus. It is a Bildungsroman, but I've decided to only look into an incident during the earlier parts of her life. Simply put, she turned a fellow nymph into a sea monster out of jealousy. I believe this is a reaction that's been waiting to burst out of Cersei because she's been taunted her whole life for looking different. She's been an outcast in her family. But in the story, in the beginning at least, she kept it all in. She kept all her feelings and she never lashed out against them. She never reacted to their taunts and their insults until finally one incident, which is this incident, that finally drives her off the edge of the cliff, and all the emotions just explodes. All the anger, sadness, envy built up all those years when she was ridiculed by her family. It just all bursts out once something that she actually cares about is taken away from her. Next, we have Meet Me at Her Spot. Cersei reacted explosively, but in Meet Me at Her Spot, the singers are dismissive. So the song by Willow Smith and Tyler Cole is about these teenagers who are dealing with their own issues until ultimately deciding to just run away and hide. Now, Meet Me in Our Spot, They Can't Find Us Here, these lines are trying to say that they're trying to run away from their problems, which I'm not trying to paint as negative, but this is simply just another one of the possible reactions that any teenager may have towards the problems that they have in their life. Next, we have Dead End. Compared to Cersei and Meet Me at Her Spot, Rodolfo Anaya's short story draws a character who decides to react rationally. Maria, our protagonist, is invited out by some other students in her school to go play around. The problem is Maria has little siblings to take care of and no mother to help her. Her father is out to work. So she's the breadwinner of her family. She's the one who takes care of the little siblings and the house. When her schoolmates come up to her, she tries to take this opportunity to have fun, until she realizes along the way that if she wants her family to survive, if she wants to have her little siblings lead a good life, this is not what they need. So in the end, she decides to leave her schoolmates and she decides to live a life that's not for her own, sadly. Next, we have We Are Okay, and as I said before, We Are Okay is supposed to be in the second half of this portfolio, but I'm gonna include this in here because we're talking about reactions, and I think Marin, the main character of We Are Okay, has a very interesting reaction to her the problems that she has in life coming at her all at once. We can't box the main character in We Are Okay by Neil LaCour into immature or mature, just like just now. We can box Cersei and the singers in Meet Me at Her Spot as immature, while we can box the main character of The Flowers as mature. However, in We Are Okay, the story is much more fleshed out because it's a novel, it's in the form of a novel, so we're able to look into Marin's thoughts and just her thinking process and her experiences more deeply. So, second half, we have We Are Okay, Nothing New, It Happens Slowly, and Never Let Me Go, and Adolescence and Grow. The reason why I chose to put We Are Okay in the second part of this portfolio, the second half, is because the second half is supposed to be about works told from a more mature point of view or growth from past hardships. And I think We Are Okay is a great example of that because we saw how Marin copes with the loss, and although she isn't fully better yet, we know she will get better in the end, beyond the book. Next, we have Nothing New by Taylor Swift and Phoebe Bridgers. Nothing New by Taylor Swift is actually almost like a step back if we look at these works in order. I talked about growth and maturing in We Are Okay, but all of a sudden I'm presenting this song that talks about anxieties of growing up and fears of aging, lacking novelty, all that stuff. And the reason why I included Nothing New in the second half is because of what I wanted it to bring into the portfolio. I wanted to show how life isn't linear. The process of growing up does not mean you're constantly improving and growing. Sometimes you'll hit a plateau or even go back to square one. And that's the message that I wanted to convey by putting Nothing New in the second half of the portfolio. Next, we have It Happened Slowly and Never Let Me Go. It Happened Slowly is a shortened version I made of the actual title, which is It happened slowly, in steps, until I woke up one day this winter and thought to myself, now, where has my childhood gone? It's a very long title. The poem is about this narrator who is looking back at her childhood, her beautiful childhood. She describes it very colorfully and with very bright language. Basically, she just makes her childhood look like the most magical time on earth. But then at the end, we see how she's long passed from this childhood. She's not there anymore. Despite so, there's nothing she can do. All she has to do is just keep working and keep going. Those times will never come back ever again, so it's useless to dwell on it. And next we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It is a novel narrated by a character named Kathy H. She's mostly recounting her life back in Hailsham when she was a teenager. Hailsham is a British boarding school where they raise children who are clones and are raised solely to donate their organs. The main character, Kathy H, is gonna be the main focus in this portfolio because she cannot seem to let go of her past in Hailsham. And the more interesting part is that this inability for her to let go of her past does not seem to stem from attachment, but more so from isolation. She's been in Hailsham all her life, and they were never allowed to go out of Hailsham. The point that I wanted to make from this story is how important upbringing is. Kathy did not seem to grow up properly, which we can see from her inability to let go of her past. And that's because these guardians, although they're adults and they're supposed to be guiding these students, they're not actually teaching or guiding them doing anything. They're just there to guard them. That's why they're called guardians, as if to keep them away from normal society. Now we are down to 2 more works, and they are the final works in my portfolio. They differ from the previous works that I have presented because they are more advisory, as in they're created to give hope. And these works are Adolescence and Grow. First, we have Adolescence. This poem tells less of a story but more of a process, a general process of growing up. But ultimately, the message that Sue tries to convey using this poem is that a good life awaits, of course, but only to those who quote-unquote deserve it. Deserve here does not mean that there's some kind of classist, elitist type of category you have to fit into. It's just that there needs to be maturity before you can finally live a life of peace. You need to hold yourself accountable, make peace with yourself as a person, and that will be what eventually makes you a happy person. And now the last work in my portfolio, which is Grow by Avril Lavigne and Will Smith. Grow here is special and kind of different from the other works in this half of the portfolio because I've been talking about works that are told from the more mature narrator's point of view instead of the present still teenage narrator's point of view. So I chose to include this as the final work from my portfolio because I think it embodies my theme perfectly. I think it's the best way to reflect what the message that I'm trying to convey through this theme, through this portfolio. It talks about confusion, identity crisis, and just basically hard times while growing up and maturing. And the song itself even mentions growing pains explicitly, which is very in line with my theme. But I like how the song doesn't end there. In fact, the song itself was not created only to talk about problems, but also to give home for listeners, to reassure them that they are definitely not alone in this world, to create another type of anthem just like Meet Me in Our Spot, but with a more positive note. And in addition, I think this song is a good place to end the portfolio because it does not imply an ending. By that I mean the suffering, stress, burdens, they haven't ended yet in this song. They're still going through it. But the singers, the narrators are still trying to heal, and they make that very clear that they know what to do and they're on their way to being at peace. And that's why I think it's a good way to end this portfolio that's supposed to be about teenagers growing up and finding their place in this world. Conclusion: what I learned, what I did great, and what I think I could have done better. For what I've learned for when it comes to this theme or this topic, aka teenagers and growing pains, when I first decided to explore this topic, I actually realized that I didn't really understand what I was trying to explore. Yes, turbulence, growing pains, stuff like that, but I didn't know what it actually meant. And I think I actually never will be able to understand what it means because it's supposed to be an experience that's very different for everyone. And since I'm not able to define this in a way that I think is satisfactory, I decided to change directions. And instead of exploring the feelings itself, I tried to explore the reactions and the changes in the characters that I have analyzed in the works I chose. Now, as for what I think I did great, I think I chose the works appropriately. I think they played into the overall theme nicely. And also there was a good variety types of works. I had short novels, actual novels, poems, song lyrics, short stories, and I liked how they were all sequential. So they weren't just a jumbled mess of works. I actually ordered them, I actually organized them, and I think putting them to a certain order really reflects my theme very well, since my theme is about growing up, and so organizing them just feels very fitting. So overall, I think I communicated my message clearly and properly. But what I wish I could have done better is that I noticed that most of my works are by women and include female characters as the main characters. Most of them. I actually cannot remember a work of mine that has a male main character, and that's a flaw for me because although it's very trendy right now to be women-centered, to be female-centered, I think I should have been more inclusive because this is about growing pains, it's about growing up, and it's an experience that's not only felt by women. It's supposed to be about teenagers. It's not supposed to be gender-based, although the specific experiences might be different across genders. I'm supposed to be talking about it generally, so I should have been more inclusive, and I should have added more men or maybe gender fluid characters instead of just women and females and girls. Aside from gender, I think I also did include various genres in my portfolio in the works that I've analyzed, and I wish I could have explored more genres because I think circumstances, situations are very important in how a character grows. So I think I missed a good opportunity to analyze how different factors and different situations might make or break a character, because all of my works are grounded in reality and I don't have a lot of fantasy or sci-fi genres. I think the only sci-fi I had was Never Let Me Go, and even then it was still grounded in reality. The sci-fi aspect of it was still not prominent enough, so I wish I could have explored more genres. So that's all from me. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for the semester. It was very fun working on this portfolio. Thank you.